Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
And I'm Nick.
And this is our review of Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Bill Duke, Richard Chavez, Jesse Ventura, Sonny Landham, Shane Black, Elpidia Carrillo, R.G. Armstrong, and Kevin Peter Hull. Directed by John McTiernan, released in 1987. This movie launched a franchise, further cemented Arnold as a box office megastar, made a career for McTiernan. This was only his second movie, his first studio movie. So we got Die Hard and all the other great things he did after that, for this, Hunt for Red October, and all that stuff. And is regarded as one of the best sci-fi action horror movies of all time. And Nick, we're kind of paying this one off from, well, I don't know, 10 years ago when you joined the show. Your very second series was the Alien series. We did all the Alien movies, and we did the Alien versus Predator duology as part of that, with the idea that, well, one day we'll get around to the Predator movies. And then they started releasing Predator sequels, and we're like, I don't know about that. But, coming up here at this point, we're inching toward number 300. And we're like, man, we got to pay off Predator. So time to do some Predator. What's your background with this one?
It's not as intense or as in deep as something like the Alien series, but this was a movie that I watched as a kid. It was, one of these movies where it's just, I don't know, it's an Arnold movie, but it was almost like as a kid, you kind of forgot it was an Arnold movie, because at first I always saw it as like an Alien movie, like the alien being the Predator in this one. And just, it was a movie that it was kind of alongside like RoboCop as a movie that I watched, where it was on VHS, and I'd watch it a couple times a year. But yeah, I was a fan. I had some toys growing up and everything. And I remember it was always the argument in like the end of like elementary school. It was like, were you an Alien fanboy or a Predator fanboy? And just kind of like the whole arguments back and forth, like, the Predator would kill the alien or the alien would kill the Predator. I'm Team Alien, always have been. That's just who I am. I think those first two movies are works of art. But I also, like I said, we'll get into this movie and stuff like that with my thoughts. But it was a movie that I watched during that time as well. So it wasn't up there with Alien or Star Wars or anything. But it was kind of like a tier 2 movie, kind of like alongside like Tremors, that I would watch every once in a while.
Yeah, and we talked about it on the Alien series. I mean, I grew up with Alien. My dad was a fan of that. I saw that a lot earlier than I should have. I conned my grandmother into taking me to see Aliens in the theater. Somehow, I still don't think she understands how I figured that out. But I saw that one. I've seen every Alien movie except the original in a theater at this point. But I didn't see this in theaters. But I had an older brother who, of course, would rent action movies with his friends and stuff on the weekends. And he was like, oh, man, you got to see Predator because you like Arnold. And at this point, I had seen The Terminator, and I think I had seen Conan the Barbarian, probably Conan the Destroyer, too, at this point. Which the funny story of that is I wasn't allowed to stay in the room when like he and Sandahl Bergman were making out, but I could watch him slash people in half. So go figure, right? But yeah, I knew of Arnold. And so we rented this. And of course, I mean, this was right up my alley, dude. As 11 years old, what are you talking about? This is the kind of movie you want to see. It's up there with Rambo 2 and some of those kind of things. I've never held it in the same light as Alien, because it's fair to call those first two movies works of art. But I think at its core, like the original Alien movie is a horror movie. It really is. It's a Halloween in space in a lot of ways. And then that second one's a war movie. And this, on the other hand, is kind of a mash of a lot of that stuff in a much sleeker package. But I've never hated this. I've always kind of remembered Predator with a lot of fondness. But honestly, Nick, it's probably been 7 or 8 years since I watched it. And I don't know what propelled me to watch it when I did so many years ago. It's one of those that I don't think you really forget. It's one that I've grown up with and know as well as I know anything else. So it's fun to come back and revisit it here, because I didn't realize this was John McTiernan's like first real movie. He had done a independent kind of small budget thing and then got this job. And from this, of course, went on to do all the other things that he did. But I knew the story behind this, that the joke was throwing around Hollywood that, well, Rocky's killed everything else. The only thing he could do is beat an alien. And Jim and John Thomas, the writers of this, sort of took that to heart and wrote a script treatment that got noticed. And then they wrote a series version of it, which became this movie essentially. And it landed in the hands of Joel Silver, a mega producer, who put some real money behind it. It was going to be like a $2 million thing. And all of a sudden it became a $15-16 million movie. And they got Arnold attached. They got Carl Weathers. And, you know, at one time, Jean-Claude Van Damme was going to be the Predator. I think everybody knows that story now, but they rounded out the cast with all these action-y stars. A lot of them Arnold kind of handpicked. And, you know, wow, what a hit of a movie. I mean, it's different than Alien, which was this concept that nobody really understood. And people fought Ridley the whole time when he was making it, right? And then it became this, you know, huge hit, right, that they had to do something with. This movie was built to be a hit. And by George, they hit on the bell. They made a hit out of it.
Totally. And I think, you know, speaking of Alien, this movie owes a lot to Aliens. I get it that they came out kind of in a relatively short period of each other, with Aliens, I believe, in 1986 and this one in 1987. But the Alien script was actually around for a couple of years, unless I'm mistaken. And they were waiting for James Cameron to come aboard after, you know, the Terminator came out. So I think it was kind of a concept that was going around being like, hey, you know, let's take this alien creature or something like this and let's have them go against military guys, because that's what Aliens was. It was like, well, you know, Michael Myers is scary with a knife, but is he, you know, what happens when you throw a bunch of SWAT members in there? Kind of a different story when that happens. So that was always kind of the thing with Aliens. But like I said, I think this movie owes a lot to that. And then also, from my understanding with the whole making of this movie too, is that you know, it was kind of James Cameron's idea as far as how the Predator looked. I guess he was on a flight with Stan Winston, and they were trying to come up with the idea, because if you watch the making of this movie, the original Predator design was awful.
Oh yeah,
it was like a giant lizard type thing that was it
looked like Homer Simpson with a duck bill. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. And I guess he was on a flight with James Cameron, and he's like, I'm just trying to come up with an idea here. And like James Cameron's like, what about like mandibles? He goes, that's something that's pretty cool. And that kind of just like clicked something with Stan Winston. So I guess in a way that, you know, we have the Predator design and the Alien Queen design to, you know, be thankful for because of James Cameron. But
yeah. I mean, Cameron was part of that discussion, at least. And I mean, you're right. The Alien script was something they were certainly aware of. None of them will cop to the fact that they wanted to try to lean toward that. What they did, and I think Silver had a lot to do with this, with the rewriting and writing of it, was the idea of this race of hunters, you know, coming to Earth. And so they decided, well, let's just focus in on one hunter. And what would it be going after? It would be going after the most lethal thing on the planet, humans. And what's the most lethal version of a human? A combat soldier. And
commando.
Yeah. And so, and who better to do that at this time? You either get Stallone or you get Schwarzenegger. And at this point, you weren't getting Stallone, you were getting Arnold. And, you know, this is a big year for Arnold. He's got Running Man going on and lots of stuff happens before T2, which put him in a stratosphere all to his own, which was only 4 years after this, but it was part of his rise up, you know. And just real quick on Arnold, like, had you seen like Commando and stuff like that at this point?
I have not. I have actually still not seen Commando in its completion. I've seen like the end of it with, you know, let off some steam, Bennett. And I've seen the beginning of him walking around with like giant logs in between his his biceps, but that's as much as I've seen of Commando. But I've always taken it that this is kind of like, what if we take Commando and put him against an alien? And that's what this movie is.
Yes, it very much is. And I will say this as a big fan of Commando. And I had seen Commando before I saw this because it was on cable a lot. And we had, for a short time, we had Showtime or something like that and ended up watching it. But yeah, it's exactly that. It is, if you take that super soldier, you surround him with some other alphas, and you just go into the jungle and let all hell break loose. And, you know, the smart thing they did is they put Carl Weathers in this movie because Arnold as a thespian, it's hard to describe what that experience is like. He has a ton of charisma, but he hasn't really developed his acting thing yet. He's doing a little bit of the one-liners and stuff. So you need somebody in the cast who can act. And luckily for him, they really put two people in here who can act. Bill Duke can really act, and he had been in Commando with Schwarzenegger, so that's how he got this gig. Jesse Ventura has charisma again, so Schwarzenegger had him in there. And then they put Carl Weathers in because he was great as Apollo. He's got tons of energy and he can act. So having all those people together, it's a good combination for, what again became a classic. I mean, there's no doubt this is going to be a classic. The fun part about reviewing this is, does it hold up? Do we still like it as much as we did when we were younger? Now, Nick, I understand you have one of your classic spins on the plot summary for us this episode.
I do. It's actually going to be from the Predator's point of view. So I figured that, this movie, everybody's seen it. Anybody who's listening to this has seen this movie. For us to sit there and just kind of give a play-by-play plot summary, what's the point? That you can hit fast forward. So let's take it from the Predator's point of view. So, it's the year 3,004,065, or as the animals on Earth call it, 1987. My name is Stan, and I'm traveling from the universe in search of the ultimate prey. I am a hunter who hunts lower life forms with advanced technology, such as invisibility cloaks, laser shoulder cannons, and giant extending claws. On my way throughout the galaxy, I find Earth and decide that it's a good place to go for a hunt. So instead of going to a populated place, I go to the jungles of what the Earthlings call Central America. There I spot some humans carrying primitive weapons and kill them. But they were too easy, so I don't take any trophies. I instead tie them up to a tree and skin them. But later I hear some weapons off in the distance and find a group of new humans killing other humans. Pretty interesting dynamic these species has with itself. This new group of humans is much more interesting and stronger than the last ones, so I decide this would be a good group to hunt. I slowly pick them off one by one until I eventually get caught in some net trap that they set. At this point, I'm done. They wounded me, I'm cold, my legs are sore, and I really could use some alien tea. I'm ready to go home and call it quits, but a couple of the humans chased after me thinking they could hunt me. So I kill these two idiots and say, screw it, the rest are going down. I go after them, and this one guy is standing on a log, cutting his chest with a knife, waiting for me. Idiot. So I kill him, and then I kill another one. I only have two left, but I'm late for dinner at this point, so I decide the female can leave. So I chase after this last one, but he rides down a water slide and disappears. It's like he basically turns invisible. Where did he go? I look, and I give up once again. But no, I'm polishing my skull trophies when this human reappears later at night, screaming, picking a fight. So I chase after him, and wouldn't you believe it, he set another trap. This log falls on me, and here I sit, Stan the hunter, outdone by a human, trapped, and I'm ready to die. But I have a surprise for the human. I have set my bracelet to explode. Let's see if he can outrun a nuclear blast.
Bravo, sir. Bravo. That is some of your best work since Terror Vision, I might add. Yeah, go back in the archives, folks, and dig up the Terror Vision episode if you want to hear Nick do a plot summary from the monster's point of view. It's often happened, but that's classic. I still can't get over Stan. Lots to get into, as you say. So let's start with the opening, and it's the part that I never remember, dude. I always think about this movie as starting with that meme of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers, Dutch and Dylan, as they were, arm wrestling in the air. But the movie actually opens what feels like a direct reference to Alien at this point, right? It's the space, and you get the spaceship flying by Earth, and boom, there goes Stan off to the side of it. I never think about that when I think about this movie, but I got to thinking this time, if that wasn't there, we wouldn't see this Predator for half an hour.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. I think every time I rewatch this movie, I'm always like, wait, this is the beginning of the movie? Because I always thought it opened up with the chopper scene. You got that da-da-da-da-da-da. The theme music of this movie goes, it's a classic theme. And that's hitting, and then you got them landing on the beach and everything, with Arnold coming out with his, polo red shirt on that's like 2 sizes too small. I always thought that was the beginning of the movie, but no, we actually get this scene in outer space, and it's just one of those scenes where, do we need it? Is it a movie where we need to be able to set it up that there's an alien in this movie, or would it work just as good, or would it work better if we had no idea what was going into this movie, because if you just see the cover of this of it, for the most part, it's Arnold being in like some kind of like thermal vision thing where you can see kind of like the red blood vessels and everything in his body, different heat signatures and everything. So it's one of these scenes where, it kind of sets it up that there's an alien here, but I just think that it's not needed for this film. I think if you just set it up like a regular army movie, I think it would just work just as good. I mean, it's almost kind of like when you watch Terminator 2 and you have Arnold walking out of the bar and they're playing Bad to the Bone. And at that point, okay, it's kind of comical with this music going on and you kind of set him up as a good guy. Would that movie work better if you thought that he could possibly be evil like he was in the first movie? It's kind of one of those things where I think they're maybe showing their cards a little bit too early.
Well, on the T2 side of things, I mean, the trailers blew that for everybody. So there's that in. The trailers to this didn't exactly like give the secret away, but I think everybody knew something about a space alien and a bunch of commandos. I'll argue that it actually works well because of three people that we've already mentioned here. John McTiernan as a director, Donald McAlpine, his cinematographer, who is still working at the age of 86. I mean, he's just a classic guy. And Alan Silvestri's music. They set a tone in those first minute of this, of you think you're getting to watch another Alien movie. And I mean like Alien in the franchise sense movie. Guess what? You're not. And we're going to start you there, but we're going to take you to Commando Land really quick. And I think it works perfectly. I like the opening and that there's a mystery to it. And even to the point that when they finally get to the jungle and they see that downed helicopter or whatever, you actually see like I didn't notice it till this time, like some of the alien blood is spilled on the helicopter. And it's like, oh, so they really do tease it along the way. John McTiernan does a good job of teasing the alien out while we have to deal with what is the first act. Because the first act is this, quote, rescue mission. And what we find out is like all the conspiracy theories now of how we think the government operates, people were still thinking that way in the 1980s too, y'all. Don't act like that's new. The CIA brings in a bunch of, freelance military mercenaries here, basically, who don't go in there to assassinate people. They call that out, but they're going in to rescue folks. But it's really a takedown job. They're going in there to shoot a bunch of Russian advisors who are advising communist guerrillas in the area and causing unrest in Central America.
I guess that's always been my question with this movie is I never really paid attention too much to the setup here. But we're to take that the mission, this rescue mission, was not real, or was there guys that were sent there to do what they're doing but failed, and then they're going in there under the guise of going after them, but to really do what they were supposed to do? That's
exactly right. They had already sent one team, that Jim Hopper guy, they find his dog tags after they find him skinned or whatever, who Dutch knows. Carl Weathers and his group had already sent them in and they failed, and they thought, well, dead or alive, we got to go get them. And that's our way to get Dutch in, is we say, hey, we're going to go rescue some people. We'll just tell him it's the ambassador, because if we tell him it's Hopper, he might get upset and want to know what's going on. He'll ask too many questions. And so they bring in, and of course, all hell breaks loose because they realize very quickly, Arnold does, like, wait a minute, these guys are heavily armed. They execute a prisoner in front of him. And that's when, him and his team rain hell down on them and wipe them all out. And they figure out, he figures out really quick that this isn't what it's supposed to be. Even on the helicopter ride there, like he's asking something about where's our cover. And Carl Weathers says to him, oh, once we get across this line, there is no cover, man. He's like, this just gets better by the minute. Like, he realizes this is bullshit at some point, and he's just going to keep going along with it because that's what he's paid to do. But he knows something's wrong. And I kind of like the setup of it. The first act could be its own movie by itself. It could be like a good Tom Clancy movie even, but that's not what we're here for. But it's kind of neat as a setup to a movie like this, where the real movie is about this predator hunting these people, right? But we're going to wait 35 minutes to get to that.
Totally. Well, the whole setup, you got to get them out there. So, and then you got to be able to have them have some type of scene in here where it shows that these guys are like the ultimate badasses and everything. And of course, we get Carl Weathers, who's playing essentially kind of the muscled up Burke character from Aliens. He's the corporate stooge. You know what I mean? That's what he is. He tricked them to get out there. Same thing happened in Aliens. Like I said, I think this movie took a lot more from Aliens than what they'd be willing to admit, because there was a lot of similarities. But we get that, but we got to get this in here because we got to understand that these guys are the ultimate badasses. As you explained, they're all alpha males and everything. I mean, we got the handshake with the biceps pumping out with the veins and everything that look like earthworms. I mean, yeah, these guys are, you know what I mean? And what's kind of cool about it though, is everybody, just like the movie Aliens, is they all got their own personalities.
Yeah.
And you can watch this movie and really understand what each of them look like and what each of their characteristics are. And I think that's well done, because there's so many movies out there where you just got cannon fodder. You're going to have a bunch of guys and, you're only going to know like 2 or 3 of them. Movies like Saving Private Ryan have done it well. Aliens has done it well. This is another movie where it has done it well, where each of the individual characters. It's
the archetype for what has become the Fast and Furious movies, really from like Fast 5 onward, where each member of the team has some sort of cool quality, G.I. Joe, back of the box, special abilities, and we get to see them do it,
Totally. And I think, you can watch movies like, someone's probably saying like, what about like the Magnificent Seven and stuff like that? Yeah. That's kind of where they brought it from, but you can also see where they've done it wrong. Like if you ever seen the new Hobbit movies, like 4 of the Hobbits, but like there's 4 of them in the background that like, you're like, yeah, I kind of know what they look like, but I don't know them. I don't know their personalities. Yeah. And that's what's kind of cool about this movie is you get to know each of their personalities in a very short amount of time. So it really gives a lot of strength to the script of this movie. I mean, as well as the performances. I mean, Jesse Ventura sitting there with chewing tobacco, MTV shirt, Gatling gun. You got his buddy Bill Duke there, where shaved head. He's the guy. You could tell those guys are buddies. And you got Shane Black. He's got the big glasses on. You got the other guy who's kind of a little bit of the smaller guy, but he's got more of the ethnic look to him. And then you got the big Indian guy, the big chief looking guy there with the big Bowie knife. Mm-hmm. And then of course you got Arnold and Carl Weathers. I mean, it's just so easy to remember what each of these guys look like and all their personality traits. It's a well done script and better done performances. And like I know Jesse Ventura has been an actor. I don't remember him in much stuff, but he's awesome in this movie. I have to say, he's just with that Gatling gun and shit. And I remember during the making of this movie too, like they wanted someone to use that Gatling gun. And even Arnold was not strong enough to be able to carry that around on him. The only guy who was strong enough to do it was Jesse Ventura. And that's, I can only imagine how heavy that thing is. And it's like, bravo to him for being able to manhandle that thing.
That character, Blaine, and that minigun have influenced so much pop culture, and people never call it out for it. Duke Nukem and Doom have that weapon in them. The Grand Theft Auto 5, that's a huge
Terminator
weapon.
Terminator 2.
Yeah. T2, it makes an appearance. Yes. I mean, Arnold actually gets it in T2, but I'm talking about beyond even its own era. That has resonated forever. Nobody knew what that thing was unless you served in Vietnam in the army and were on a helicopter, because that's where it's usually mounted. The idea of somebody carrying that around is ridiculous, but it works perfectly for this movie. I'll tell you what the archetype for these people are in this movie, and John McTiernan has said this. It was the Wild Bunch. Man, he was doing Sam Peckinpah in a Western. He was doing the violent Western, and it's perfect for it. And if you think about this movie in those terms, you said Magnificent Seven, I say Wild Bunch, you really get what these people are all about. And it makes it perfect. And it's why it's so much fun to watch them go on this adventure. And you don't need to hear their credentials. You don't need to know their entire backstory. You just watch them operate. And I mean, what they do when they infiltrate the camp is pretty amazing.
I mean, they go into this area and it's like, they mow them down. They do it's almost like it's fun and games to them. I mean, even the opening scene, it's like they got this like vehicle that's like, they got the back wheels off and they got it like, some type of like pulley system where it's powering a generator so it can give, the camp power and stuff. And, it's such an Arnold scene where he's like, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to lift this effing truck up and just pull it right off the center blocks and just let it ride right into there. And of course, you got to get that with an Arnold movie. You got to get him lifting something and the biceps swelling and everything as he does it. And it's like, they just, like I said, they go through this entire group and they mow them down like they're nothing. And you get like some classic scenes in here. I mean, you got Arnold throwing the big giant knife, don't stick around. And then even like Jesse Ventura sitting there being like, He's dug in like an Alabama tick, and I ain't got time to bleed. I mean, these very quotable scenes.
Well, what's great is that nobody remembers Richard Chavez has the best line after that when he looks at him. Pancho says, "You got time to move?" Because he fires 3 grenades up above him. But that's another weapon that makes itself into video game land now that everybody has, and it also made an appearance in Terminator 2 a few years later. So yeah, no, I love all of that stuff. It's a great action set piece. You got all the springboard explosions, the ridiculous amounts of pyro going off for what they're doing. And they do mow through them like they're not there. But it's also funny how Anna, what will become the hostage, sneaks up on Arnold with a pistol. And of course, he knocks her out because he hears her coming from a mile away. And when he's looking around the room, he realizes this is total bullshit. Like, Dylan has set us up on this. And when Dylan walks in there and starts picking up the paperwork, he doesn't even try to hide it anymore. He tells him, he's like, where's the hostages? Where's the ambassador? And all this. And he lets him know right then, no, there never was any of that. These guys were Russian advisors. They were going to outfit these guerrillas. We can't have that down here. And look, for the time, man, that was a real thing. That's why the Thomases set this in Central America. There was so much covert military action going on during that time from America to try to thwart these communist uprisings in the countries. And so it fits the time frame, and it allows this movie to operate in an era when so many of these kind of movies were rah America take over everything, and that's not really what's happening here. In fact, these guys are quite conflicted about what they've had to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you see Arnold, he gets mad. It's like, I'm not a hired gun, you're bringing us in here like mercenaries. We're not this, it's like, it's almost something like, you almost look like the Contra affair and stuff like that in Nicaragua and stuff like that. It's kind of like a play on that, where it's like, we're coming in here to kind of mess, clean up your dirty work. That's not what we're here for. It's like, I always took it as like, they're kind of like the A-team.
Yes.
It's kind of like you call them in when you can't call anybody else in, and they're going to go in there and they're going to save hostages or they're going to get something out. But as far as like essentially being an eraser for a guy who's, who he says, is pushing paper behind a desk is not what they want to do. But at this point, it's kind of like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you're here, you did it. No one else could do it. Thank you. Let's get the hell out of here. Because at that point, what are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? It's like, you can't refuse. You already got the job done. You killed all these guys. Let's just get the hell out of here. But I think, like I said, most importantly, this stuff is all throwaway. It really is. I mean, it's a fun scene, but what the entire point of it is to set up that these guys were able to go into essentially, a militarized base and kill 40 guys without breaking a sweat. And that's the entire thing, is like, you want to set them up to be the badasses because now we're going to introduce the Predator. And if the Predator wants to hunt these guys for that reason, and that's what I've taken from this, is like, when you watch the beginning of this movie, they find Hopper and all these other guys, and they're strung up. And the thing that you notice with them is they still have their skulls intact, which will become a plot point later.
Yes.
They're just skinned like, lamb, that's ready to go to the, ready to be cut apart at the slaughterhouse. There's nothing. They're just killed. They're left there as, kind of almost as a symbol. But it's going to be different with these guys because they showed, and almost like we as the audience were almost like the Predator watching this movie, where it's like we're seeing these guys are badasses and these guys are essentially what he wants to go hunt. It's, you got guys that go out there and they hunt deer, and then you got guys that are going out there and they hunt bear. He's a guy that hunts bear. He wants something that's dangerous. He wants something that he's able to take a trophy home and be like, these are ones I killed because they could do this. And that's the entire point of the beginning of this, is to show that.
Exactly. And you hit on it in the plot summary. We played it off for fun, but it is realistic, is that the ultimate hunter wants to go after the other ultimate prize. And it's not the biggest, pretty looking animal. It's the one that can fight back. And that's what makes it dangerous.
Oh yeah, most dangerous game, right? So, yeah, that's what we get. And
similar.
I like the setup though when we first get the point of view of the Predator, because that's going to be something that's very, very key in this movie, and it's something that you normally see in slasher movies. Like Jason, Michael Myers. You'll get the
the mask point of view, but this time it's done with that heat vision. So it's giving us everything we want. We actually get that when they discover that first downed helicopter and they find Hopper and all of those guys. And Billy, the Sonny Landham, the Indian character, a Native American character, says it best. He said, Major, and that's what they call Dutch, because they're not still in the military. They're paramilitary, I guess you'd say now, but they kind of still maintain rank structure. And he tells it to him in such a great way. It's another, again, you put a good character actor around Arnold and it works, is they were firing in all directions and they had no idea what they were shooting at. There's no tracks of anything after them, you know, and they can't figure it out. And that's the Predators watching them going, these guys know what I am. Do they know I'm here? Like it's sort of neat. And you've hit on something though, as much as Arnold is the lead guy in the credits or whatever, this is the Predators movie and it's about to become all about him.
Yeah, totally. And I like that. I mean, I like it when, you know, the scorpion's on the ground and he picks it up and you see the claws and right away it's like, okay, this thing's not human because you're seeing its hand. That's not a human hand. But you're also seeing, like I said, the vision and everything, which really adds a cool element to this movie because, you know, just seeing the heat signatures and everything like that, it's like the Jaws music. You know, when you hear that dun 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 dun, it's like the shark's there, and when you hear that, you know, it's almost like the vision's turning on with that sound.
Yeah,
and then you can see them. You know what I mean? And then you hear kind of how their voices sound different. They almost sound like echoed and recorded and everything. It's showing that this thing out there is more advanced than what we are.
Well, that's what's neat about it too, is it records them and it plays it back. It can only do so much at once. Like it's got the 32 gig phone instead of the 64 or 128. So it can only hold so much at once, but it records things as a way to trap people, but also as a way to try to figure them out. We don't know that the Predator has any language. It does this cool little, I don't know, it's like a cicada kind of thing, growl type thing, and it will yell and growl later when it's fighting. But it doesn't communicate the way we do, right? And it doesn't have telepathy as far as we know. So it's trying to follow them and learn them by doing that little playback and recording bit. And I mean, it's what makes the hunt cool, because the second act of the movie is the Predator stalking them. It is Michael Myers walking around the houses and just looking at people and stuff. He's not doing anything yet, but you know the threat is there. And that's what the tension builds. And this becomes a horror movie in the second act, which is, I mean, it's been an action movie. Now it's a horror movie in the broad daylight of the jungle. That is a very hard thing to pull off. And they really do it here.
Well, even the recording stuff, just to kind of go back to that, it's almost like you're watching a spy thriller, because that's always like something that you see like in movies like that or TV shows like that. Like even like you watch something like Fargo, where you have the guy and he's got recordings and he's just sitting there and he's listening to him. He's trying to figure stuff out. And that's the whole thing. It's like they're adding this element of intelligence to this creature that's out there. And I think it's just well done. And I like it too, that it's like, as we go on, they're falling more and more. It's into like this predator, you know, it's really a hunter, and predator is kind of a dumb word for it, but this hunter's like game here, as far as like how it's going to hunt with them and how it's going to play games with them and everything. And it's interesting kind of how things kind of transform here with it, as far as how it's hunting them and how it's kind of changing its game when it comes to them, because it sees them as, you know, something that's worthy to it. And one of the things I really, really liked about this movie, as they're walking through, Shane Black's character, I think is Hawkins, he ends up getting killed and it takes his body.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did it take its body?
And you see him later strung way up in the trees. And that's the trick. And the thing that they don't figure out until later is that the reason there's no tracks on the ground is it's up above them. And, you know, you never think about what's up above you, right? Like, especially those guys, they wouldn't think about any, you know, in that jungle, no people could really operate like that. This thing has its camo where it can kind of cloak against the backdrop of the jungle. I think Anna calls it like a chameleon, and that's a great way to describe how it's, you know, a cloaking device kind of works. And it also lures them into where it knows the only place they can go. I mean, Billy says it's like, we're surrounded by gorillas on every side. We either sit here and fight them all out, or we go down through that valley. And we don't really want to do that, but it's really our only way out. And so it's like putting them in a narrow area. You know, if you go hunting, you try to surround your prey in a place where it can't get out, right? And it's up above them while they're down in the valley. And that scene where it kills Hawkins is great because she tries to escape and they're chasing after her. He catches up to her, and then it comes, she says the jungle comes alive, and it really just comes alive and it gores him right from behind. And so long, Shane Black.
And I like that too, because what they do is they set up kind of like her character a little bit, because they, it kills him, and then they're like, they get there, they got their the big gun scene of this movie where they just sit there and they just mow down probably 100 yards of rainforest with their guns. I mean, it's just like them just wasting ammo. I'm a shooter. I know you are too, Jay. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of money that they're just putting right into those trees, man. It's like, that's a lot of freaking capital with those bullets. But they do set it up though too with that, because they go, she never took off. She's scared as hell because of what she saw. And it's like, she knows these jungles. She knows this area. And given any other circumstances, she would have been out of there. We would have never been able to find her. But she's staying with us for a reason, and that kind of gives them a little bit of a spook, like, what the hell?
Exactly.
It's almost kind of like she's almost like the Newt character of this movie.
She kind of is in a lot of ways, and she's also there to kind of explain some things, because we'll find out from her later that she's seen this before in her village. In the hottest years, something would come and it would hunt, our greatest fighters or whatever, and it would always hang them upside down and skin them like that and take parts of them for trophy. And this is the hottest year, since I was a kid or whatever, she lays out. And what's neat is, they kill Hawkins, or it kills Hawkins, drags him away. They're looking for him, and they found like part of him on the ground, but the rest of him is, 100 foot up in the trees. And I saw our friend, the anaconda, crawling through, by the way, on the side there. It wasn't going as fast as it was in that movie, but it did make an appearance and say hello. And then Jesse Ventura is, and what I love is he's got a nickname for his big minigun. He calls it Painless, which I thought was awesome. It's like, I'm about ready to let Painless talk, or whatever. And he's looking for something, and he gets shot, and it hits him in the shoulder, and you don't really know what happened to him until he turns around and he gets blown through the chest with that pulse cannon thing that the Predator has on its shoulder, basically. And the Predator does this cool reveal to Mac at that point. He like flashes his eyes at him. So it's like, you see me now? And then that's when they start laying waste to the jungle, my man. And that's where all of the ammo went. And I'm just sitting there going, this is insane, but it's what those guys would do, right? It's one of the coolest action scenes ever, because Bill Duke is holding the trigger down of that gun till it's so empty it's about to burn the barrel out.
I don't know, man. It's like, I kind of want to do that. I just want to go just unload something like that into a bunch of trees or something like that, and just that power that's coming out of there. It's a cool scene. I mean, again, you got the guys, and the biceps are all like flexed out and oil. You know what I mean? Everybody's all oiled up and sweaty, and just the bullets going. I mean, it's pretty much like one of the ultimate 80s like just gun scenes as far as just blasting stuff. I mean, Rambo eats your heart out. I mean,
exactly.
It's cool, but the coolest part about it though is they go, we didn't hit anything.
Yeah. Well, what you find out later is they actually did. They just didn't kill anything, And so that's when we do get to see the Predator, who's climbed high enough and away from him that he unveils himself for the first time, and he's shot up down his leg, and he's got to perform a little surgery, and that's the first time we see him in a state where you realize, like, oh, he's not invincible. That green stuff is his blood. And okay, that's weird and kind of freaky and looks like Mountain Dew, but okay, sure, we'll go with it.
Well, you know what it looks like? It looks like if you were ever like going to like a rave or something like that, like those glow sticks, and you cracked it too much, and like it got down your hand or something. You got the green one. It's green glow stick goo. Yeah, that's what it is.
It's exactly. If the Electric Daisy Carnival got out of hand, that's what would happen. So but I love this though, because it's the first time we really get to look at it, right? And we're still seeing it in its armor, but we see like, okay, so it's got a cannon on its shoulder. It looks like a parrot, which is kind of funny. And it's got this, you don't know what its face looks like. So you just think the helmet, it's where it is its face. And it's like, okay, so it's part tech, but it's like part organic too. It's got to heal itself, but it's able to do it pretty clearly. But I love how it like screams in pain when it puts that clamp on itself. And you go immediately back to the soldiers and they all look around at each other like, what in the hell is that? Like, they have no idea what they're up against. And what's so neat about that is in the first act, they were so unstoppable that you thought, well, man, there's nothing that can touch these dudes. And now we've already seen one of them, torn apart. The other one got blown apart. And now they're kind of ragtagged up. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, totally. Now, when I first, I look at the Predator now, I mean, maybe this isn't like PC, but I think it's like almost like a Jamaican stripper. I mean, it's like, it's got the dreadlocks and then it's got the fishnets everywhere. Yes. So I just find it interesting that it's like the fishnets. I mean, I get it. It's weird. I mean,
it's very weird. But it's the thing is you start to realize about it is it's got an animalistic piece to it, and all of its gear has a purpose. Like those fishnets have got, it hooks stuff on it all the time, and it allows it to move around in all kinds of environments. And, realize like you wouldn't want like heavy clothing because later on, when Mac's chasing after it, he starts dropping his stuff because he's hot and he can't haul all that crap around. And he's just going to take the M60 and what belt he's got and go after it. And that's when the tension really starts to mount in this movie. We get to nighttime and great scene with Bill Tuke talking in the moonlight. Like he's talking to Jesse Ventura, like we all came out of there. We were on top of all of them, and all this stuff. And he's so crazy. He's been dry shaving the whole time, which is nuts. And he breaks the razor on his face. That's how intense it gets. And, they've set up traps. Something sets it off and it's a boar that comes through. And of course he attacks it and thinks, they've killed it. But that's when they realize like, no, the Predator's using trees to move. That's how, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And Anna's laid out the whole bit for them, and what they do. And that's when they catch it in the trap. They catch it in that big, spring-loaded net thing, and it blows itself out of there. And I thought, man, what a great way to get out of that thing. It's like, okay, well, no more hiding. Going to reveal myself now because you guys are in for it. This is it.
Totally. I love the scene though with Bill Duke with the Bic razor. He's got the single razor, they're the 99-cent ones. He's in there, he's shaving. And when I was a kid, I was kind of like, what the hell is he doing? But I guess as more as an adult now I'm like, he's scared.
Yeah.
And it's something, you know what I mean? Like some people bite their nails. Some people will fidget. And it's like him, he's sitting there and he's like with the razor and he's like going on his face. And you can see that it's just like kind of a nervous habit for him. And as he's pushing it into his face, you see the blood coming down, which I can only imagine he really did, which, that hurts. I mean, anybody's cut themselves shaving, understands that nick feel that you feel.
No, actually, I can tell you that is an actual special effect because when he broke that out, that wasn't written in there. He started doing that as just a thing. And he said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to break this on my face. So the prop guys had to figure out how to rig one up that would shoot blood on his face and wouldn't cut him. Like that's just a rig. That's just good special effects.
I'm disappointed, man. I thought you were a method actor. So, but anyways, yeah, but it is cool though, because it's like, I don't know. It's like being now like with my career and everything like that. There's so many times where I'll be like kind of talking to someone or doing something and I'm in the midst of something. And then I realize that I was still kind of doing it as something else happened. And it's something like that too, where you're seeing the guy focus on it and just like that cut thing. I don't know. It's just kind of a cool scene there when you kind of realize what's going on in his head.
You've hit on it, is that he's scared, and we're watching these men who presumably have seen a lot of things and have lived and survived a lot of stuff now in a situation where it's mentally breaking them apart. They've seen their comrades killed. They're all starting to fall apart. They're not getting at each other, but they don't know what's happening. They don't know what to do. And that's when after they catch the thing and it gets away, that's when all hell breaks loose, because Mac goes after it. Dylan goes after him because he's decided he's going to do something right for once, which lets you know immediately, oh, he's dead, and the other thing that's happened is, when the Predator got away, it sprung another trap, which was this big log to come down and do like an Ewok on the Predator or whatever. It hits poor Chavez in the chest. So every rib he's got's broken. So he's useless now. So we're trying to drag him out in one direction, for him going one way, Dylan and Mac go the other way. And what I love is how Mac thinks he's got it cornered. Him and Dylan underneath a tree or whatever. It's like, I see it out there. And you do see it moving. And I got to say, man, that's an effect that really still holds up. Like, it's amazing how well that still works today. It doesn't look perfect. It looks alien and weird.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. It totally does. Yeah, but what's cool about this though is like after this whole scene happens is you got the split of the group, because you got to get that in the second movie, because right now you got too many guys.
That's what happens in a horror movie, right? Everybody gets split up, and that's how Jason kills you.
Yeah, because it's, if they would stick together, they would live. And that's kind of like with my plot summary is, I feel at this point, if they would have just left as a group, I think the Predator would have just been like, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I've been wounded. They kind of bested me with this trap. I'll go back, lick my wounds. I'm not going to tell the people back home at the hunting club about this. I'm just going to get out of here. And I think that, Bill Duke's character, he just goes crazy, and he's like, I'm going to go after there and go kill him and stuff. And he starts, I forget what he's saying in the movie too, but he's like, it's just,
well, he's repeating the lines to Long Tall Sally for the Little Richard song that they were listening to on the right end. He's like, oh, Tall Sally, she buffers me. He's just losing it. He's just kind of reverting to just animal instincts, and he thinks he's got the thing cornered. So he sends Dylan in one direction, and he's going to sit over here. And that's when you see those little 3 triangles, the laser dots. And this is before laser sights became like a thing everybody knew about, So when it lands on his arm, and he's like, I know what that is. And he turns around, the look on his face when he realizes this thing is sighting me up on my head. And then the camera shot of it basically blowing the back of his head out into the camera. That is visceral horror stuff, grade A.
Oh yeah, totally. And then you got, Apollo Creed there going there, and he's running after him. And then, that's when this guy kind of shows like more of its technology. It blows his arm off.
Yeah. Because as he's raising his gun up at him, blows his arm off. So he gets the other gun up, and that's when the Predator comes behind him and, hits him with the 2 prongs. And that's it for, raises him up off the ground too. Because you knew that guy had to die a vicious death.
Yeah, just the running, and then the 2-foot long talon blades coming out of his arm and everything. But then we go back over to which I still am like, this scene is like one of the weirdest scenes in this movie. So you got Dutch, you got the
Anna, you got Pancho, and you've got Billy all together. Yeah. And for some reason, Billy decides, I'm going to take off all my stuff. I'm going to get my knife out, cut myself, and go mano a mano with this thing. I guess he's killing himself, or basically going to buy his friends some time. That's how I've always read it. I don't know why else he would do this.
Well, it's almost, I don't want to sit there and say it's almost like a Chekhov's gun here, because later in the movie, the Predator does the same damn thing to Arnold.
Yeah.
But it's something where I think he's done. He's just like, you know what? I'm not scared of anybody. I'm scared of this. And I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to run anymore. I think that's kind of what it is. I don't think he's really given his friends time. I think that's more of just a side effect of what he's doing here. But I think it's just like, he's never been scared of another person in his life. He's scared of this, and he's not going to run. He's got to sit there and face his fears for this thing. And yeah, he does this ritual cutting of his chest, and he just waits there with a big Bowie knife, and then you hear a scream, and it's like, okay, he's dead.
Yeah, that's what I love about that is it's not on screen. For all the violence we've seen, we don't see his death on screen. And I love that. I think it's a great touch. It's a great move by McTiernan to say, all we need is the scream, because at this point, what has happened to him. There's no doubt, because this is the pickoff. This is the horror movie pickoff right here, because Pancho gets shot by the Predator right after that. Dutch is wounded from that. And that's when he's got to send Anna to the chopper, and this is the first time Arnold really gets his ass kicked by this Predator.
Yeah. So he realizes at this point though, too, it's like Anna's about to grab a gun. He kicks it away, and he's realizing that, and they said it before too. It's like, she doesn't have a weapon. She's not a threat to him. Yeah. He doesn't care about her.
No sport.
So he gets her to the chopper, which I still question though. It's like, you got this woman who's a native there who has probably would be part of this guerrilla group showing up to the military chopper. I guess you could drop a couple names and they'd realize, okay, maybe she knows these guys, but it's always been kind of like a thing where I'm like, I wonder if the military would even take her up on on the helicopter at that point.
I think she would have to go with like, I think he gives her something so that she can show it to the commander in charge there. Like, I'm with these guys now. I was with them. You need to go back and rescue what's left of them, all of that kind of stuff. Because at first she doesn't act like she can speak English. And then all of a sudden she very much can speak English.
Yeah, I mean that happens in movies. I mean, watch Marvel movies, and Wanda has an accent in the next movie she doesn't. So it's
yeah, it comes and goes. I mean,
yeah,
it's not really important. The important part is we see Dutch get away because he does dive off the waterfall. It's a great scene, by the way, when Arnold's
slippery slide, man. Yeah, that looks like a lot of fun.
It actually does look fun. But what's funny about this is, or what's neat about it, is how he is accidentally just covered in all this mud, and he basically just pulls himself up to these roots, and it's like sitting there waiting to die, and the thing can't see him anymore. And he realizes like, oh, it can't detect my heat, even though I don't have mud in my eyeballs, but whatever, we'll go with it, right?
I do like, though, when he gets onto the beach and he's getting covered with mud, and he's just kind of laying there, and then all of a sudden the splash happens in the background, and it's like, oh shit, he really followed me down here.
Yes.
And like he's ready to die. He's got his he's basically got his chest stretched out and like, just finish me. I'm done. And then the thing walks away, shoots like a rat or something like that it recognizes the heat signature. I mean, he's lucky he covered every inch of his body with the mud, but
Hey, but it sets up what is going to be the final confrontation, right? So Dutch gets his knife out. He builds, I mean, it's like a scene out of Conan, by the way. It's very similar to a Conan the Barbarian battle scene where he's got these logs with sticks in them and he's got all this primitive stuff and he's ready to go and he's covered in mud. And I love Arnold lighting up that torch while the Predator is over there like shining skulls. So we're to assume that like he's gone back to all these soldiers that he's killed and he's pulled their skulls out and hung them off one of his legs, as trophies. It's really, really gross, but kind of neat and weird at the same time, right? And Arnold screams into the night, this unbelievable howl. And like you said in the plot summary, the Predator's like, oh, you still want some? Okay. and then his cloaking device is broken. Whatever. We'll do it then. And we get that final showdown. And I got to tell you, man, it's always neat in these movies where we try to put people against Arnold who can beat him up a little bit because he's just such a friggin' huge thing. And in the 80s in particular, he's so big, it's just hard to think anybody could touch him. But Kevin Peter Hall is 7'2", so he's a full foot taller than Arnold. He's an athlete. He's a big guy. He's got on a 200-pound suit. And it looks awesome. The way they have to stage this fight, considering the guy was held up by like strings and wires just so he could move around, is pretty amazing.
Oh, I like it. I really do. I mean, when he sits there and him and Arnold have that slow showdown and he just takes off his mask, he takes off his armor, he's like, all right, screw the technology, screw the weapons. We're going at this man to man or alien to man. It's a cool.
Well, I mean, he's got Dutch at one point. He pins him by his neck on that log with those two spikes, and he could kill him right there. But he's like, nope, we're going to keep going, and he lets him up. And that, I mean, I think that's was the Predator's huge mistake. Is like, okay, you really want to go? Let's go. And then they take off all their stuff, and that you get that great face reveal. And I mean, you talk about something you can only ever see once, right? Like the first time you see the alien open up and do the kill in the first Alien movie, right? It's the same thing with those mandibles.
Oh yeah, totally. It's never looked better. I've seen all the sequels. The Predator in this movie looks the best. And I just like Arnold's reaction where he's like, oh, you're one ugly motherfucker. And it's great. And I love it too, because like I said, you can sit there and look at this movie and go, okay, this Predator is hunting these guys. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You know what I mean? He's just got the technological advantage on them. But for him to just go, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. I want you man to man right now. You know what I mean? Fist to fist. We are going to go at it because you piss me off. And I just, I'm going to kill you with my bare hands. And that's what it is. And I think it's such a cool scene when he's just stripping off the armor and he's just like, we're going. And Arnold punches him in the face. And just like the whole little mandible thing, like he's
like
just
broken all of a sudden. Yeah.
He like broke his face a little bit. He's like, oh, you asshole. And then he just like clobbers Arnold and he goes flying like 5 feet in the air. It's just, it's got a right sense of humor at the end that just makes it work.
Well, it's something I never realized until watching it for this time, but we got Joel Silver here, right? Who also produced another huge movie in 1987 called Lethal Weapon. And what's the climax of Lethal Weapon? A fist fight between two guys who have all the guns in the world, but Gary Busey and Mel Gibson decide to fist fight on the lawn. Right. It's almost like he ripped it off. And I never thought about that before, but I think Lethal Weapon totally ripped this off.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's taking place in a pond. I mean, that was taking place in the rain and kind of like a wet condition and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot there, but I think, there's been a lot of movies where you got the guy, I mean, the final duel. I mean, we've seen that in Star Wars and a lot of other stuff where you got to have the guy and the hero and the antagonist just lay it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, and to be
Hulk
fair,
Hogan versus Goldberg at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, like Lethal Weapon came out earlier than this did in the year, but they're being made around the same time. Joel Silver would have known that. And I love that there's that synchronicity between them, even if it is just a happy accident, which it's probably not. But if it is, it's awesome because you do get a great fight. And again, you get somebody who Arnold can definitely do damage to, but who can do great damage to him. And what you realize is Dutch is trying to set the Predator up into one of his big traps, and the Predator sees it and it's like, oh no, I'm going to go over here now. And it's like, oh crap, you got out of the way of my spike log. Now what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Oh, even too, I mean, we talked about Aliens. I mean, that's the climax of Aliens. I mean, it's like, all right, well, how do you take on a 20-foot alien? Well, just get in a big ass mech warrior machine and we're going to fight. I mean, it's just like, it's quintessential 80s and it's great. I mean, you even look at like, the Rocky movies. I mean, it all comes down to the final boxing match at the end of the movie. And it's like, that's all it is. I mean, these are just aliens, Predator. It's a boxing match, whether it's in a hangar of a space station, 20,000 miles above a planet, or in the jungles of Central America, and they're going to just lay it out there and, in the middle of a pond or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yeah. They're in like the little eddy outside of where the lake is off the waterfall there. What's neat though, is that you realize Dutch has a backup plan and he kicks that stick out of the way and that huge log comes pile driving right down on the Predator. And so the Predator thought he outsmarted him, but Dutch thought, okay, what if he gets around that one? I got to have a backup log. And he springs the backup Ewok log, and that's what pins him. And I got to ask you here at the end, when he sets his timer to blow up, that's kind of a cheap move, man. Like, that there's no honor in that. For something that fights with a lot of honor, that's kind of a lame coup de grace.
Yeah, it's kind of a dick move. You know what I mean? Where it's like he's sitting there laughing at him. It's like, oh, I'm going to kill us both right now. It's the dick move, man. You were bested by Arnold, a couple times in this film. And, whether it was a net trap or whether Arnold was figured out your whole thing with the thermal vision. And yeah, you're going to sit there and blow them up. But I also take it as these predators, like they understand that there's a level of intelligence with other alien species, and they want to keep themselves secret.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, like whether it's the, nuclear blast on the wrist or a cyanide pill in the, the tooth, it's like, going to kill myself, and that way there's nothing to be able to take home. So that's kind of what I took it as, but it's still kind of a dick move.
It is. It really is. But it's neat because he replays the laugh that he recorded Billy's laugh earlier, and that's what he's playing back to Arnold, which is kind of neat. And it's like, wow. And Arnold knows what's up. And he dives that's a great shot too, when he dives off the edge of that thing as it's blowing up behind him. And I got to ask you, like, I don't know if that's nuclear or not, but it sure does produce a hell of a mushroom cloud, because that helicopter that Anna has got is coming with them, and they get kind of rocked by it before they see it off in the distance. And I'm like, well, if Arnold didn't die from the blast, he's going to die from the radiation.
Yeah, I think that was actually a plot point of one of the comics where they said, like, well, he survived, but then he died of radiation like 6 months later. So
right, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's cool seeing him there. I mean, what it does is it sets up kind of the final scene as the helicopter's coming in, and you got Arnold just standing there in the wake of a nuclear blast. You know what I mean? Like arms on the hip, hands on the hip, muscles all flexed, and just being like, All right, it's time to go home.
Well, and what's even better is he's riding that helicopter ride home, and Anna's looking at him, and you just see him, and he's just beaten to death, and the weight of it has hit him like my entire team is gone and like vaporized, and nobody will ever believe this. What am I going to do now?
It's kind of the same dilemma that Ripley was in after the first Alien movie, where it's like all the proof is gone at this point. I mean, yeah, he's got Anna there to sit there and kind of, recalibrate, this story and everything like that. But it's the government. They're just going to sit there and just blame it on whatever they want. It was a weather balloon.
Well, they'll just say the gorillas like set off some device, and then that's it. It'll all get covered up. But you see it. It's a win, but it's also like one of those Pyrrhic victories for like, gosh, we took so much in loss to get to this point, and what did we really gain from it? And I love that it leaves us on that beat where you just don't know. It's like, how do you explain that when you get back? And the answer is you don't. You just go, gorillas set off some explosives, and you just move on. But it's a great ending to this flick. So I think it won't be too big of a surprise, Nick, but it's time for final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So how big of a popcorn is Predator for you still after all these years?
Dude, it's like the latest movies that we've been doing have been large popcorns, man. That's not us.
No, right?
Yeah, we do junk, man. What the hell? So no, this movie's a large popcorn. It's a classic. I mean, it's right up there with Aliens and just like so many of these other movies that we have talked about, where it's just one where if you haven't seen this movie, like, what the hell's wrong with you? That's like telling me you never had a glass of water before. I mean, it's something, if you watch movies, you've seen this movie. So it's a great movie. It's just fun. It holds up, just so well. It's right in the midst of the Arnold, extravaganza that we got in the 80s and 90s. It's just, it hits. There's nothing bad about this movie is what I guess my review is like, there's nothing bad. Everything works. Special effects, the characters, the acting, everything works in this movie. It's a large popcorn. It's a fun movie, and it's one like Aliens or RoboCop where you can just put this on at any time, and it's like, okay, well, we're halfway through, half the characters are dead, but I can just finish up the movie because I know this movie so well, and I just want to keep on watching it because it's a good time. So large popcorn.
Yeah, I got to tell you, 10 years of doing this with you and 11 years of this show, it's rare to do stuff that's good. And we've done a bunch of good ones in a row here now. But hey, coming up on anniversary time, I guess it's time to do it. This movie totally, totally works and still lasts. And it's fun in all the ways you want it to be from its time period, but it still works today. Evidenced by the fact that they've never made another good one. I mean, Predator 2 is terrible. Like, it's fun in a bad way, but it's a bad movie. All right. And Alien versus Predator and Alien versus Predator Requiem are total junk. And they are going in. They're just horror movie trash. And then Predators, it had such potential and just totally sucks. And then Shane Black got a hold of one, and the Predator's even worse somehow. Like, they've never been able to get this right again. I think some of the comic stuff is pretty good, but even that gets a little ridiculous. This was a one shot where it was perfect. And it's because you've got the right music, you've got the right director, you've got the right beat, and you've got the right cast. And it's Arnold at the height of his powers. It's such a fun time, and it is a total large popcorn. Yes, you need to go back and watch this one at least once a year, folks. As for nothing more than just a fun time. Put this on with a bunch of people and just enjoy the ride, because that's what this movie is.
Well, I got to ask you, Jay, though. It's like you get done making this movie, and does like, let's have Danny Glover fight the Predator ever come into your mind for a sequel?
I have no explanation as to why that sequel exists the way it does, other than the marketing machine of Hollywood, man. I mean, it's Predator 2 is next level bad. That's what I'm trying to say. It's terrible.
It's like, I like Lethal Weapon. I like Danny Glover, and I like just comedy that doesn't fit with this movie. But yeah, maybe we'll talk about that movie in the future.
Yeah, that one is definitely one it's more of our style, honestly, of what we usually do. But we had to do this one, man, after all those years ago doing Alien. And just leaving Predator hanging out there. Like we had to come around and get Predator done. So glad we got to do it. Episode 298 in the books. That is unreal to think about that we've been doing this that long, but a good one and a good one to latch onto here. Folks, follow the show's social media at Film Strip Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You'll find announcements for upcoming shows, links to our Letterboxd page where you can find all the reviews we've ever done. Go to filmstrippodcast.com and you'll link to our anchor.fm distribution site where you can find the podcast on the platform of your choice. Apple, Spotify, Google, name it, we're there. Please share the show if you can on your social media. Leave us a positive review. It helps others find the show. And hey, let us know what you think of the movies and the reviews. We appreciate the support. For Nick, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.